So today I'm here with Jerry. Jerry is the President and General Manager of Viessmann, and we're currently sitting not between two ferns, but between two boilers.
Between two boilers,
A few more. Why don't you just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at Viessmann Canada?
Yeah, so I'm the President and General Manager of Viessmann here. Took this role on in January of 2022, so I'm in my second year of that position. Joined Viessmann in February of 2018 as the Director of Sales and Marketing, and then took over for Harold Prell when he retired at the end of 2021. So so I run the Canadian operation here. We work very closely with my U.S. counterpart. We have an operation down there, and we each report up to the President of Viessmann North America.
Awesome. So obviously you and I know each other quite well.
Sure.
Outside of the boiler world, and so it'd be interesting to know from the standpoint of Viessmann. Forget the brand. Like Viessmann, from a branding standpoint, is probably one of the most recognized boiler brands globally, and they make a great product. But outside of product, what do you think makes Viessmann unique? What makes Viessmann one of the top brands for boilers in the world? Forget Canada.
Definitely the sustainability side of things. If you look on the Viessmann corporate website, especially with Viessmann over in Germany, they're very big on sustainability. I mean, our mission statement is we create living spaces for generations to come, right? That's a statement that we use and see a lot throughout our literature and the message that we share with the Viessmann family members. It's family-owned business, as you know, and we're all considered part of the greater Viessmann family, but sustainability and looking for better climate solutions with our combustion products, as well as heat pumps and the other things that we're into. I know in Europe they have photovoltaics, they're into battery storage and things like that. We don't have those Viessmann products here in North America at this point in time, but on the global scale, we're kind of known for boilers here in Canada, and that's how Viessmann started out, of course. But they're into the refrigeration side of things as well as other sustainable initiatives.
Yeah, I see that a lot. Here in North America, because before I worked at Eden, obviously I was in the field. I saw Viessmann products. Viessmann products have been in North America for a very, very long time. But one of the things that a lot of people in Canada don't realize that is in Europe, Viessmann is known for a lot more than just boilers. Like in Europe, Viessmann is very heavily involved in heat pumps and not just air source, but even on geo heat pumps. Viessmann, has some involvement. So the other thing that's quite interesting is that there's some pretty big news that's come out of Europe, obviously out of Germany, is that Carrier has thrown out a small amount of money, about $12 billion, I think is the number, to purchase
somewhere
Viessmann.
around there,
Yeah, so that's interesting news. So give us a little bit of background on why that's unfolded and what that's going to mean to Viessmann over the next year or 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. So going back to the earlier part of your comment there, so yes, we've been in Canada here now 43 years.
Wow.
We came in 1980. And set up here in the Canadian office and expanded to Langley, BC, as well as the Warwick, Rhode Island office. That one's been down there for a number of years. Viessmann as a company is 106 years old. The fourth generation now running the business. And yeah, the Carrier news, I mean, that caught a lot of people off guard, including us as employees. And you can understand why. I mean, from a legal perspective, the few people internally that were involved in those negotiations obviously had to keep that under their hat for a while. It leaked on a Monday of a few weeks ago. By Tuesday afternoon, it was officially announced, and by Wednesday, we were making announcements and sending notifications out to all of our wholesalers, our contractor network, through all the trade magazines and the associations that we're affiliated with. So, like I say, it caught people off guard, but I think Viessmann did a really good job at the corporate level, and it made it easier for us. Within 1 or 2 days, the messaging was there as what this relationship will mean moving forward. So to capture it all, Carrier has purchased the climate solutions portion of Viessmann, which is about 85% of the overall business. The Viessmann group is involved in refrigeration. They've got other investments. There's real estate. There's things like that they're involved in. But the climate solutions division has been purchased by Carrier. So that's about 11,000 of our 14,500 employees will be joining Carrier's larger group, and Carrier represents, I think, close to 80 different brands. And they're about 45,000 employees, if I recall, with that. And so it's probably going to be the end of this calendar year before it's official. The Viessmann brand is still owned by the Viessmann family. Max Viessmann will be on the board of directors with Carrier under this new arrangement, under that purchase. And some of the conditions that have been put in place is that for a minimum of 3 years, there's no structural changes within the Viessmann organization. Their main production facility in Allendorf, for 10 years, there'll be no changes or movement of that facility there as well. I think it was 5 years for any of the R&D type facilities and other manufacturing facilities and whatnot. So we anticipate, we don't know because we can't have conversations with Carrier yet, but once the new year rolls around and we start chatting with each other, kind of find out, okay, what kind of synergies do we have? How can we work better together? I mean, Carrier is a massive brand as well, so that tag team becomes quite the powerhouse for sure. And they're into heat pumps, and we compete with them currently, right?
Yeah.
The furnace, we compete with every furnace manufacturer.
Yeah.
Always have. They're my bigger competitor than the other boiler guys, honestly, right?
Yeah.
So how does that come together? We have to still sit and figure that out. Right now, I mean, Carrier has so many other brands that still run under their own brand name. I wouldn't anticipate anything different, but we don't know what we don't know. But for the rest of this year, everything is just status quo. We're just moving forward with our own heat pump development and things like that we're doing. We're not making any changes until we're told otherwise. And even then, I think with us partnering with Carrier, that's going to speed up our heat pump development and getting into the air and cooling side of things and becoming more than a boiler company in North America. Us now doing kind of what Europe is already doing for Viessmann, right? So we're not looking at bringing Viessmann-built heat pumps over here. We're doing our own development in-house. There's testing going on in the room right next door here. At our facility here to have a product available for the first quarter of next year and whatnot.
So you've touched on some key things, and I think the messaging is important. Viessmann, and I even know this because I follow the Viessmanns on social media, specifically on LinkedIn. You've identified that they're very focused on their employees and having everybody engaged as partners. And I think even in the way you've described the Carrier agreement, it's shown. Yeah. Right? They didn't need to have in that agreement that you need to take care of the people in our German facility for the next 10 years. We need to keep that stability. What you do beyond that is you. Yeah. And even in things like making sure that in North America things stay stable. We know because when I was still in the field, we were a Carrier dealer. And obviously Carrier has bought a lot of companies. And I think that what they're doing is probably a positive thing. I don't imagine they're going to get rid of such a strong brand as Viessmann. They're going to do like they've done with other brands and go, how do we continue to develop Viessmann beyond a boiler company? Because
absolutely. And like you say, we're a very strong brand here in North America already. We distribute through different channels than they do. Like, why disrupt that?
Yep.
Does it get tweaked over time? Yeah, possibly.
Yep.
Right. And in terms of us being able to have some synergies and working well together, I'm excited. Honestly, that's a lot of people were nervous at first, understandably so, and there's still probably some nervous energy there, but more excitement than nervous because of what are the potential opportunities that we can do together with the Carrier Group.
Yeah, and there's some past history where there's some other companies that have done it. So Rheem purchasing IBC, same reaction. Like I have firsthand experience with that where people went, whoa, like Rheem is this giant entity. They're going to buy this really specialized boiler company and it could be a disaster. And the reality is that it's been a great success. And even IBC customers will say that having Rheem as part of that umbrella has been great. They don't interfere, but they provide the guidance when you need it. And the reality is that you, as the president of Viessmann here in Canada, you're going to have more ability to get things done having Carrier as your big brother to be like, hey, we need you to help our buddy Jerry out. It's a little bit different when somebody at Carrier is at the table with you, especially if you're negotiating deals or just things like how do we get products at better pricing and
absolutely, our purchasing power gets that much better too in terms of supply. So it should speed things up and get products and components faster. And we're really excited about it on the heat pump side of the air side of things. That gives us that much more negotiating power of buying with them because Carrier owns Toshiba as well, right, out of Asia.
I didn't know that. Interesting.
So that was I think a year plus or more ago. And the main reason from what I saw from the Carrier interviews and things like that was that they're interested in the European market more so. Not that North America is like, okay, we're just going to forget about it. but it's mainly for the European market that where the interest was. But the fact that we're as well established as we are here, the expectation would be like, okay, let's keep doing what you're doing. Let us know where we can help.
Yeah.
And we'll reach out to them as need be, and vice versa, right?
So the other thing that comes into play is obviously, you and I are both involved with CIPH, and obviously CIPH has an important mandate to educate and sort of help guide the industry in collaboration with manufacturers and distributors and wholesalers. So we all know that heat pumps are pretty hot in Canada. It's being pushed by the government.
For sure.
I can say this because I'm more known as the heat pump guy, I think, than a boiler guy.
For sure.
But the reality is that we're not going to succeed in Canada if we just entirely focus on heat pumps. We need to have an approach that incorporates all Canadians. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of retired people that have, Viessmann boilers installed in their homes. And if we rip those boilers out and just start throwing cheap heat pumps in, I'm just going to say it, potentially we're going to put that customer into a point where they've got elevated bills, they can't afford to pay their bills, whatever the case may be. A hybrid approach is very important in my opinion, not in every application, but in retrofit applications where you've got the ability to go in and put a Viessmann boiler in, but maybe you're putting a Viessmann air to water in as well, so the boiler only runs on those peak days where you really need it, and the rest of the time, an air to water or even a geothermal unit could supplement that.
Yeah.
Are you going to see Viessmann going in that direction in the coming years?
Absolutely. I mean, the first products that we're introducing, it's called the VitoCal 100. It's a 100 series boilers, just kind of in line with 100, 200, 300 series boilers that we have. But the first one we're coming out with is an air to water monoblock. Basically, we're very much into hydronics. We're not getting away from the hydronic side of things, and the perfect customer for us is somebody who already has a Viessmann boiler and, let's say, an air handler and traditional air conditioning, and now an air to water heat pump could potentially replace that air conditioner when it fails, and you put a hydronic air coil in that same system. That person can still have their in-floor heat, they can still have their baseboard radiators if that's what they want, but that heat pump can take care of all of their cooling needs, some of the shoulder season for sure on the heating, and if it's a mild winter, possibly all of that to get away from from using natural gas, but having that gas as backup for those cold days. Or, God forbid, the heat pump fails and needs to be serviced in the middle of winter, you still have a secondary heat source for it. So hybrid to me is the easy button. That's the low-hanging fruit. And within CIPH, we had our day on the hill there a couple of weeks back, and I was part of that group. It was the first time I attended that as the current chair of the Canadian Hydronics Council. And we went and met with MPs, and we were talking to them about, in order for hit the government's mandate of net zero by 2050, our industry can be a huge player in helping them get there.
Yeah.
Whether it's with hydronic systems that are more efficient, incorporating air to water heat pumps, not just ductless splits and things like that, the rebates that are available, getting more people involved in the trades to become heat pump technicians and HVAC technicians and things like that, right? So the very first product that we'll be introducing would be an air to water that marries beautifully with a boiler system, but also could go in with somebody who's got a traditional forced air furnace and air conditioner.
For sure.
And the AC dies, and heat pump is the natural replacement fit. The ductwork size already for the cooling side, but you've got your gas as your backup, right?
So the nice part about air to water, I mean, obviously as hydronic guys, we're biased, but we can
Sure we are.
we can sell our bias because the reality is air to water is what the industry needs, and it's what Canadians need. Because if we start moving towards air source heat pumps, and I did a lot of air source heat pumps before my current role, the reality is we don't have enough technicians to do that work. When you do a monoblock air to water, it's very easy. We have a slew of plumbers that can transition very easily into air to water applications.
Exactly.
We're not training and equipping a new industry. Now, I have to be very careful. We got to teach them the new rules. And I'm sure you've seen the training I've done called Heat Pumps Are Not Boilers. And I'm just only talking about piping and flow rates. But once we get people past that, re-enreeing to an air to water is easy. In my own home, I had a Carrier air conditioner. It looked like it might have been one of the first. It was very old. So when I ripped that out, I put an air to water in. I still kept my gas furnace, and I'm still using forced air heating and cooling. The only thing different is I'm using an air to water. My air to water now also takes care of all my domestic hot water. So when people go, well, why didn't you do an air source heat pump? The air to water was cost effective, does the heating, does the cooling, does the domestic hot water, and anybody is able to reproduce and do this. So to me, air to water is a good play, but I think everybody needs to understand that it's not always the right play, just like air source heat pumps aren't always the right play, just like geo's not always the right play.
Exactly.
There are times that we're going to need gas, and the reality is just times that we're going to need both of those.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we move forward, as we sort of see the changes in our industry, what do you think some of the challenges our industry is going to face, especially as we start to transition more to heat pumps? Do you think we're ready? Do you think there's some things we need to do differently? Where do you think we're going to struggle?
I think the place we're going to struggle is competing with the air-to-air type of heat pumps that are out there, and that's what people say, ductless splits, mini splits, that sort of thing. The lower cost options. Hydronics cost more on the front end, for sure. Way more comfortable, savings over time, but most homeowners don't think that way. So part of our challenge, and we've had that challenge for a long time, we talk about it all the time in our CHC meetings, is we're our own best kept secret. How do we promote hydronics and get it out there so that homeowners can have the best of both worlds? You can have all the comfort that comes with a nice warm floor. You can have the energy savings. You can still get the cooling that you need. You can still get the decarbonization by having, not using as much gas, but still having that comfort of a redundancy or a backup system for if you do get that minus 20, minus 30 type of cold day, you're not going to suffer and get away from the comfort side of things. So that I think is part of the biggest challenge, is just getting that message out there. Us getting that message out to government officials has been a big part of that too, like air to water heat pumps, getting that included in the rebate programs and stuff.
Well, that's a great comment. By no fault of anybody's, it's been overlooked by Enercan that air to waters aren't there. Now, obviously, people like you and me, I'm part of that same group.
We're pushing for it.
We're pushing for it, but we're pushing for good reason, right? That it needs to happen. One of the other things that I see too, Jerry, is that people look at the price of a boiler, and I'm just going to make some numbers up. Neither one of us are salespeople and have sales numbers. But if the boiler is, let's just say the boiler is $9,000, the reality is the air to water is more. Typically, if a boiler is $9,000, an air to water is going to be $12,000. And what we see is people going, no, I got to do the condensing boiler. I can't justify that added cost. The thing they're not recognizing is that boiler, it tells you what it does. It boils water. That's it. Your air to water unit is doing your heating and your cooling. You got to remember that when you put that Viessmann air to water in, or whatever brand it might be, when you put that in, there is no VRF. There is no I got to go stick in a couple of heads to get air conditioning. And as we talked about in my house, don't assume that an air to water is only for hydronic. In my case, it's forced air heating, forced air cooling through a coil, and it's doing my hot water. And that makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of different ways we can apply the technology. To me, the shortcoming is going to be in training, and I think that that's where it's important for organizations like the HRAI and CHC to engage with stakeholders, which they've done, and make sure that there's available training for people that want it, so that the plumbers and other people in our industry can transition from boilers to air to water or water to water or whatever else is coming.
Yeah, exactly. I'll use Vancouver as a great example, right? I mean, traditionally air conditioning, most homes in Vancouver don't have AC. Right, and then that incident there where they had that heat wave, and hundreds of people, unfortunately, died because of that heat wave that went through there. And now it's making people think that I should have air conditioning in my home. And with the City of Vancouver's mandate of getting away from combustible type heating sources and having put
they've drawn a line in the sand. There is no option.
There's no option. But now by putting that heat pump in, you now have air conditioning too. Right?
It makes tons of sense.
It makes so much sense. And even on the East Coast, I grew up on the East Coast, nobody had AC back in the day, and ductless mini splits are going in as backup systems or primary systems with baseboard electric heat or hydronics as the backup. A lot of people now have air conditioning for those few days or weeks where it does get really hot and sticky and things like that, and they're seeing that benefit of having cooling as well as heating. So that's the future, I think, is that every home should have heating, cooling, good ventilation. That's the perfect mix, right?
Well, one of the other challenges too is that we have to recognize that as Canadians, we're all different. Like what's going to work in Western Canada and Alberta is different than what people in Ontario are going to want. And it again comes back to that conversation of we need to have hybrid applications. We need to allow people to do certain things. Obviously, we know what the mandate is with Amendment 15 that, by 2030, we have to get our carbon usage back to 2005. So obviously, heat pumps is going to help us there. But some of the other things that we're seeing people working on is hydrogen. So is Viessmann doing anything from the standpoint of their boilers with hydrogen, or?
We have been. There was a hydrogen mandate, not mandate, but a program that they were working on with our boilers over in Europe. Now they've not, the ones we have in North America haven't been certified as hydrogen ready per se, but those exact same products are used in Europe, and they can handle a 20% hydrogen blend right now.
Yeah.
We even know that ours could right now today. A lot of appliances could handle low hydrogen mixes. Whether that's going to get continued on or not with the Carrier news and things, hard to say. I mean, with everything that happened with the war in Ukraine, over a year ago now, and the big push in Germany to get away from fossil fuels altogether, heat pumps is where the focus has been. So the hydrogen focus has stepped back somewhat, but existing products, including our new CI2 boilers, as well as the new E-series of our Vitodens boilers, can handle up to a 20% hydrogen mix. We just don't have a piece of paper that says so for North America, but we have that in Europe. We're watching, I know Fortis in BC is looking at hydrogen, and the guys at ATCO in Alberta are doing some hydrogen testing and whatnot. There's a few municipalities in Ontario here that are already blending low percentage, like 3 to 5% hydrogen in the existing gas line with your existing furnace, with your existing gas stove at home and things like that. And seems to be working, right? So I think hydrogen is another potential option as well. But there's the green, blue.
I was going to bring that up, right? It's how clean is the
hydrogen from gas? Are you any further ahead versus what if you're making hydrogen from nuclear power or something else that way, right? So,
it's interesting with hydrogen. The ATCO example, Gradient's been working with them, a Canadian manufacturer out of Western Canada. Even in their product, I have that installed in my home. They can also do up to a 20% hydrogen mix.
Exactly.
We're going to be sitting down with Enbridge later today, and Enbridge is obviously very keen at looking, can we do this? How do we do this? So it's going to be interesting to see where things go. The other thing we have to be very conscious of is future-proofing whatever we're doing now, because we don't know what's going to be here in 2 or 3 years, right? We now have ChatGPT, which is a new AI system that is like blowing people's minds, including mine, going, we didn't even see this coming. So, pie in the sky, what do you think might come down the road that could revolutionize our industry?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Right? I'm not even sure I know if I could answer that question. I think that we're going to see new fuel sources. I think that there's going to be...
I think hydrogen in Canada, the Canadian government had put together a document about their future direction for hydrogen. I think it was last year, the Prime Minister met with the Chancellor from Germany in Western Newfoundland, looking at a hydrogen ammonia producing facility there to sell liquid hydrogen over to Germany, right? And stuff for that. So I definitely see hydrogen being, if we do stay on a gas of some sort, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, because pure electric across the country, there's like you said earlier, there's northern climates, so even the best cold climate heat pump, it's going to struggle, and COPs come down as it gets colder. Having an alternative fuel source, and we still have an abundance of fuel here, but let's, obviously we want to use it in the cleanest way possible.
Absolutely
cleanest way possible.
It comes back to the comment of you can't be all things to all people. In Western Canada, I'm sure the gas is much cheaper and more readily available. In Quebec, electricity is very inexpensive, readily available. We definitely, I think we both agree that we need to be focused on the next generation. We need to, leave a healthy planet. But in the same token, it doesn't mean we need to be an all or nothing. We need to do this as a staged approach, which I think Enercan's done a good job at. And we need to be conscious that we shouldn't push Viessmann, you need to do everything with hydrogen or air to water, whatever the case may be, because who knows what Elon Musk is working at between 1:05 a.m. and 1:08 a.m. when he's got nothing going on. Maybe he's going to revolutionize heat pumps, because he has said he's going to.
Well, the heat pumps that they have in their Teslas are pretty impressive. There's I've watched a number of YouTube videos on those, and they've got their 8-way valves and things like that, and that's how they heat and cool those cars, right?
And I think that's good for our industry. One of the things that I think helps our industry a lot, and if you look at companies like Ecobee, is when people that are not from our industry step in and disrupt the industry. You know, when Stuart Lombard founded Ecobee, he didn't have a thermostat background, and we can even say the same about IBC. The guy that founded IBC, he had nothing to do with HVAC. And as we see people without an HVAC background coming into our industry, some people get their backs up going, oh, you shouldn't be here, whereas...
Well, they bring a different perspective, though.
Exactly right. You and I look at it as a different perspective.
The good thing about that, it forces all of us who've been kind of maybe got comfortable doing it the way we've always done it.
Yep.
It's like, hey, we need to step our game up.
Well, look at Geo, right?
Yeah.
Google got into Geo. Now they have Dandelion, which is a leader in the United States. They haven't quite come into Canada yet. And that's a great example, whereas a big proponent for Geo, we looked at it and went, this is good. That's going to push everybody to push harder, do more.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Do you see a player coming down the road that's going to disrupt our industry in hydronics? Is there somebody out there like this
on
technology?
On the hydronic side, nothing comes to mind. I mean, you know, as you touched on, you know, Tesla wants to get into the HVAC side of things for homes, right? You know, they've already got their Tesla Powerwall, they've already got their solar panels, they've got their cars, they've got their electric charging. Let's get in the house too, not just everything around it. So I could see that happening. I could see that happening for sure.
I think it'll happen too, and as you've identified, I think that's actually great for Viessmann, because at the end of the day, the Viessmann engineers are very qualified to take on any challenges, and that could be that extra emphasis of, oh, you're going to do that? Hold my beer. Yeah. Right? Watch what we're going to do. And I think it's great for Canadians, and I think it's going to be a really interesting next couple of years.
Yep, for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you making the time.
Great to spend some time with you, Mike.
Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you.